The Chicago Bears were apparently desperate to trade up for TreVeyon Henderson, even though they were not able to seal that deal, which kind of informs a little bit why the Bears draft went the way that it did. We're also going to talk about the reactions to Shamar Turner, and apparently Dan Roushar is a big Kieran Amegadjie fan. We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host, Eric Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Shy Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. This one comes from Dan Wilder of the Chicago Tribune, where he says this. On Friday evening, fingers in the Hallis Hall draft room remained crossed that a swing at landing a playmaking running back would connect. Poles pressed the gas and made aggressive attempts to trade up. Henderson's blend of speed and vision, plus his tenacity in pass protection and skill as a pass catcher, were alluring. The Bears had significant interest. So when you pair this in, right, this kind of and this is something that a lot of Bears fans have put together, that the Bears draft board did not fall the way that they thought that it would have. And it really did significantly change the Chicago Bears draft plans. Now, do I think that Luther Burden would have still been there for the Chicago Bears? Probably, right? I think that we could have, in the Bears' perfect world, we probably would have seen a draft that would have went Colston Loveland, TreVeyon Henderson, Luther Burden in the first and the second round, right? And how that would have really informed, like that would have been basically Ben Johnson going into the system with almost his perfect offense as far as the weapons aspect of things, right? And it's not a surprise there. When this came out late yesterday, all I looked at it and said, yeah, that makes sense. That tracks, right? That tracks per what it felt like how this draft went for the Bears, is that the Bears were hoping one of probably either TreVeyon Henderson or Quashawn Judkins was going to fall there for them at number 39. And when that didn't happen, there was, I wouldn't say panic, but there was a clear shift in the Chicago Bears draft plans at that point, right? You then still draft TreVeyon Henderson, who I do believe that the Bears were extremely high on when you look at his fit under Ben Johnson's offense at the slot receiver, all those type of things there. But I think that shift of trading back then in the second round was really okay. Both the running back that we wanted is off the board. We weren't able to trade up and try to get him. Weren't able to secure that. Now let's just make the best of this as we can. And they still did pretty decently, right? I want to be clear. I am still more positive on the Bears draft than I was at any point in time, right? But I do think that there was a big shift and pivot there for the Chicago Bears. And for what it's worth, if that was the pivot that they had to do on the fly there, they still did pretty damn good. Now, I know there are going to be some more pessimistic Bears fans that say things like, well, this is why the Bears should have taken care of this earlier. This should have, you got to have a trade partner. Like, and if the teams, because I'm sure at that point, right, if the Bears and Ryan Post has historically been pretty good at realizing a shift in the dynamic of the draft board, if he was being aggressive about trying to call and move up, I mean, you got to have a trade partner. Teams were probably set at where they were at that point in time. And it is what it is, right? And that's just how it shapes out, man. Unfortunately, we already heard that there were a lot of teams trying to reportedly trade up in the teens to try to get Colston Loveland, and that didn't happen. Those calls stopped. But when it comes down to it, like the Bears would have had almost they just narrowly missed out on the perfect draft for Ben Johnson's weapons on the offense. I know people are going to say, well, Hayes, it wasn't the perfect draft for the offense because they didn't get a new left tackle, which we'll talk about a little bit here in a second. But I do think that they still shifted, and they shifted pretty well with it. And it's just unfortunate, that they weren't able to get that. If that is who they had selected as their guy, they weren't able to get it done. And that's just the nature of the draft, right? That's why, in the draft process, it's fine to get all caught up in the rumors and the what could be's and all those type of things. We all do it. I don't say that as a knock to anybody. I do it as a fan. Your favorite podcaster does it as a fan. Like the team does it as hoping that they can get caught up in things. Like we all do it. But the reality is, like, and you have to deal with the reality of these situations. And the reality is that, hey, if the Bears, if their plan was to get Colston, TreVeyon, and Luther Burden, yeah, they didn't get that, but I think they still pivoted pretty well overall. We just got to see what they're going to bring down at that left tackle position. And that leaves a lot for this Bears team to look at. And we'll see how it ultimately ends up shaking out for the Bears. I'm not going to hold what could have been against the team. I like to hear that they were aggressive about trying to make sure it still happened. That's great, right? Make no mistake about it. But we know that Ryan Poles is not one that's just going to give up assets. He's going to survey things. He's going to look at the value. And they made a pretty solid pivot when it came down to it. But with that said, one of the biggest questions is what's going to happen at the tackle position, right? We've heard from Ben Johnson that a depth chart is not set yet, right? We've heard from Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson of the possibility of moving Darnell Wright to left tackle, which then what does that open up for Ozzie Trapillo or Braxton Jones or whoever else to be the other tackle? There's a lot that seems to be up in air. And one of the parts that are going to play a big thing in this is the evaluation of Kieran Amegadjie. Now, I've said it before. I don't think you can bet a lot on Kieran until he shows it. Right now, I'm not in practices. I'm not in the mini camps. The coaches are. That's their job. Kieran had a rough rookie year last year, and that was to be expected. I don't even think in the perfect world the Bears would have even played Kieran Amegadjie too much. You look at the start that he had last year. He allowed a sack, a fumble, and he got flagged 4 times in a single game, right? And that's when he got his first start in for Braxton Jones, who had a concussion at that point in time, right? But it seems like Dan Roushar, the Chicago Bears line coach, is still very high on Kieran Amegadjie saying this. I think he's got a lot of potential. I don't think it's fair to evaluate on anything he did last year based on the fact that there were no OTAs, there was no training camp. You're talking about a guy going in and getting healthy around week 3, then to begin the process, and then, hey, little repetitions, very little fundamental work, and hey, go and play. I'm excited about where you can go. I think the guy's got some lower power traits that you can get encouraged about. You see the length, you see the athleticism. You got to bring his confidence up. The building blocks of any good fundamental play, it starts in his lower and it'll move forward. And you guys know, like I am very high on the Bears' new coaching staff. They're getting a lot of trust from me because you brought in these guys, and Dan Roushar is one of the most renowned offensive line coaches that you're going to see in the NFL. But make no mistake about it. Sorry. There is a competition for one of the starting tackle positions. No matter what, Darnell Wright, damn. Darnell Wright is going to have one of those starting positions, whether it's moving to left tackle or staying at right tackle where he's been. But overall, you're looking at a position battle in camp where it's going to come down to Trapillo, Amegadjie, Braxton Jones, and what he's shown, right? What does this coaching staff really feel about Braxton Jones and what they've seen from him on tape, what they've seen from him a little bit working out with them, right? That's going to be things that's going to come into play here. Now, I look at Kieran Amegadjie. He's still a player that is very raw. He is also a player that can play multiple positions, which could help him or hurt him, whatever it is that we'll see what happens there. He's still listed as just an offensive lineman. So that doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be tackle or going to be guard. We'll see what ultimately happens there. But I think when it comes down to it, Roushar is the type of line coach that you give trust to, right? That he's not Semo. He's not Chris Morgan, right? Or Chad Morgan. He's not that. He's not Semo. So because Dan Roushar is coming into this process with a complete open mind on exactly what he wants this offensive line to be, right? And who can work out to that. You got one starting position open on that offensive line. And that battle for that position is going to be really important. That's going to be a story of this training camp that we're going to hear a lot about, is the battle that he has there, that we have there at that open starting spot on the off. Leo, I can't pet you. I'm podcasting. That we have there on that starting position on that offensive line. And if Kieran ends up working out this year, right? And by working out, that doesn't necessarily mean starting. If Kieran is a solid rotational player for this year for the Bears, I think that's still Kieran being ahead of schedule, right? Like he was so raw coming into the NFL and for the Chicago Bears that it's easy to kind of look at the potential and the potential that's talked about and take it as a sure thing, but it takes time to develop that. Now, the thing is do you have the right coaches in here to develop it? And now, yes, I think you do, right? I don't think you had the right coaches in here to really take a evaluation of Kieran. And to be fair, what Dan Roushar is saying as far as no training camp, no OTAs, he came in week 3. That's where he got healthy and he went right to it. I think that's fair. That's fair to say and take a look at that and what that means for a player that came in and was bad. Kieran Amegadjie was bad as a starter last year. Make no mistake about it. He was bad. It was not good for him. It just wasn't. And, now to shake that off and to rebuild that confidence, I think that's a very important part of what Dan Roushar said there as well. Like, you got to build the confidence in this guy. And unfortunately, like the way that the Bears coaching staff and overall our season went, I'm sure there's a lot of guys whose confidence was affected by the way that last season went. And so you got to rebuild that. And I think that's the thing that the human element sometimes that's easy to forget is that, yeah, these guys are still human. These guys still do have and suffer from confidence issues, especially as you're establishing yourself in the league, right? You don't want to hear big confidence issue from a 4 or 5 year vet, but from a guy that was taken as a very raw prospect to where he is now. Like, yeah, you expect there to be a little bit of confidence issues there, right? You expect there to be a little bit of doubt around that. And this is up to this coaching staff to rebuild that and find out what this player can be in Kieran Amegadjie. But I think we're going to be really open in what we have in the offensive line. You look at the depth that we have there, or lack thereof, depending on how you want to look at it. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for players to show themselves. That goes to Luke Newman. That goes to Ozzie Trapillo. That goes to Kieran Amegadjie. Hell, that even goes to Braxton Jones. If he does end up losing the starting position, he's still going to be part of the rotation. For some people that talk about it as if like Braxton's going to go away and fade off into the night this season are just wrong. You're still going to see a lot of Braxton Jones, because if he does not win out a starting position, he's going to be your swing tackle then at that point. And that means you're still going to see a lot of him because he's going to be backing up either tackle position. And so there's a lot of that's coming into this year, and it's up to Dan Roushar. It's up to Ben Johnson, right? It's up to Declan Doyle to kind of figure that out and see what they're going to be, and that rotation on that offensive line. And it's not as easy as we try to make it out to be when we sit here and talk on podcasts or we talk as fans. It's not that easy. It's really not that easy. And so what Kieran can be or what he ultimately turns into, I'm excited to see. As I've said many times before, I want everybody in my team's uniform to succeed. Whatever version of that, whatever level of that remains to be seen. But I want to see everybody succeed. I think it's weird when people actively root against somebody on their team so they can be right about something. And that's just my personal opinion, right? So we'll see what ends up developing for this team and for these players on the offensive line at any position, and we'll see what we can get, man. I want to go to some of your comments, then we'll get into the last topic of the day. We got King Book of World. Shout out to Book in the building. We got Crimson. What's going on, Crimson? Bear down, Dwayne. Glad to have you in the building. FGB all day long. You already know Justin's in the building as well. Glad to have you guys here bright and early in the morning, 7 a.m. Chicago time. Gilbert says, how epic would this draft been if we did get Henderson at 39 and Burden at 41? I mean, listen, it would have changed some things, right? But those three, and I get it, they're all skill positions. But those three would have really that's transformative for your offense, right? Having a guy like TreVeyon Henderson who can be your running back day one, sharing the backfield with Swift and Johnson, right? And having Colston Loveland, and we already know the versatility he's bringing. Luther Burden at the slot, like that's crazy weaponry there, right? But you still got to have the offensive line, so we'll see what happens. Finally, I made my first. That's your first live stream. What a shout out to you, brother. Glad to have you in the building, my boy. Glad to have you here, man. Why didn't they use the 10th pick on a running back? BJ used 12th pick on Gibbs, and look what happened. Yeah, because like that's still there. You still need value, right? And unfortunately, like you could have got that value in the second round. The only running back worth taking at number 10 would have been Ashton Genty. So you still got to look at the overall value. And I think what you got in Colston Loveland, especially with how Ben Johnson can use him, is still overall really good value. You're not going to, I get it, like as fans who think, well, just take the best guy regardless, but you got to look at that value there. Now, one could say, well, take Amarion Hampton at number 10. There were some rumors around. I can't remember where Amarion ended up going. I think more towards the end of the first round. But, overall, like the Bears saw talent. And I do think either way, in my personal opinion, If Genty fell at number 10, you probably take. If Genty or Campbell fell to number 10, you were probably taking those. But the Bears probably came with the way that this process worked out. They were probably always planning on taking Colston Loveland at number 10. It's just the way that I view it, right? It's tough being a good as a rookie in any position, especially one who missed camp. Facts, broski. It's really tough there to do that. It's tough. We got Bears Junkie in the building. Raymond says, "Good morning, brother. What's going on, man?" Wow, if that's true, I'm slightly disappointed. I mean, listen, that's why I say don't let the rumors and stuff start becoming opinions. Like like there's so many woulda, coulda, should. I guarantee you, every team has a story of, well, we try to move up to get this guy, right? Like, it is what it is. You got to have a partner to be able to do it, right? I think that's the thing that it just comes down to. You can have all the best laid out plans in the world, but when it comes to trading, you got to have somebody who's willing to trade with you. You got to have a partner, and when you don't, that's when things fall by the wayside, right? Hampton 22. Okay, yeah, I was about to say I think you went considerably further down. Thank you for that, Gilbert. But let's get into the last topic, right? One of the picks that Bears fans were kind of, I think, still trying to fill. I think you're still trying to fill on it, right? It's Shamar Turner, the defensive tackle who also plays some edge, right? Is that filling, right? And it seems like around NFL circles, there's a lot of there seems to be some big ups for the Bears in drafting Shamar Turner. When it came to the Athletic, they said this: a 3-year starter at Texas A&M, Texas played a 3-technique role as a senior and head coach Mike Elko's 4-man front, logging snaps everywhere from 0 to 7 technique. After playing primarily on the edge as an underclassman, he had it right for the transition inside to 2024, and he made his presence known on every tape study despite playing through a stress fracture. I think that is the biggest thing that I'm looking at, right? Because, of course, in me looking at Shamar Turner's tape, I'm looking at tape from last year, right? I looked at some tape early on, but because the position changed, I was looking at tape from then. If you mean to tell me that with the motor, the quickness, and the tenacity that he played with, that was all with a stress fracture. And for anyone who doesn't know how bad a stress fracture can be, it literally means anytime you put weight on that leg, on that foot, you feel in a tremendous amount of pain. Tremendous. Right now, tremendous for regular people. For gladiators that are football players is a little bit different. But I think that paints it in a different light how tough of a son of a bitch Shamar Turner is, right? Like, let's be clear here. Shamar Turner is a tough motherfucker, right? And that's really what I like when you look at defensive linemen, when you look at Chicago Bears defensive linemen specifically, right? What do you want? What is something that identifies a Chicago Bears defensive lineman? Toughness, not back down, right? The motor, go, 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 go. Shamar Turner brings potentially a lot of that to the Chicago Bears. And I know that Billings, big Billings, was such a huge asset to the Chicago Bears last year. But I think, like Shamar, no matter what role he plays this year, you got Grady Jarrett. Billings is his last year of his contract. Shamar Turner could be in for an uptick. Like this first season, lay the groundwork. Heal, those type of things. Learn what you need to do to be successful at the NFL level. But I do think that, like, the Bears got a potential star in Shamar Turner. I think people forget that, right? This one coming from Lance from NFL.com. He says this: his pressure rate is hurt by a lack of length, but he's a restless rusher who hurts blockers, edges, and eventually leak through if the play extends. His athleticism and chase quickness will see him on the near of the pile and some frequency as a future starter, right? That's what you see from there. The Draft Network, extremely high on it, right? I think that I get it that he's a tweener, and I get it that he doesn't have a true position right now, and that does bring some concern over what his overall upside is. I understand that. But I think when you look at it, like getting somebody in who can line up as edge, who can line up as interior defensive line, even at the base, if Shamar Turner doesn't turn into a starter at the NFL level, which, again, I do think that he will, even if he does not, though, what else does he bring? Right? The positional versatility under a Dennis Allen system, it could be huge there, right? And so I like it when it comes down to that. Like when you look at that for Shamar Turner, that's what could make things special here, right? And again, right? Lester said it. He's a dog. He absolutely is, bro. And you need people like that, especially in your defense. I don't know about y'all. I want the monsters of the midway back. I want a defense that no matter what, you feel it when you play the Chicago Bears defense. That's what I want to see, right? And I think that the Bears are slowly building that identity under Dennis Allen. Now we got to see how it's all going to come together, right? That's why I say I'm not letting my excitement turn into expectation this year. But I think when you look at just how they're starting to get a identity on paper as it stands right now. They got to bring it in reality. But right now on paper, they're starting to establish an identity defensively, and Dennis Allen is going to be a big part of establishing that identity. A lot of that's going to come down to who and what Dennis Allen is as a defensive coordinator, and then also how he uses these players. You're going to see the usage of, for example, like we already know Kyler Gordon, right? Jaquan Brisker when he's healthy. Like those things are going to really be transformative under a Dennis Allen system, and having a front line that can get pressure consistently, that's also something that really does change that a little bit for the Chicago Bears. So I think that's a really good thing. I think that the front seven, bear down here, front seven in go mode, attack, 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 back end lurking. Listen, TJ Edwards, we already know TJ Edwards is a pit bull. He's not just a dog, he's a pit bull, right? And now that you have a better front four, right, as far as execution there, and don't overlook Dayo Odeyingbo as well. I know that he was one of these picks that like Bears fans didn't necessarily expect, so thus they don't know exactly how to feel about. But I'm telling you right now, it's going to be you're going to see quite a bit of surprise out of what you get from this Chicago Bears defense overall, and especially the defensive line. I really do think that. Gilbert says, I watched a couple of talking heads say Turner may be better than Stewart, and with his versatility of playing anywhere on the line, he is mad valuable. Listen, and that's the thing. You got to always know, right, that when you hear this draft speculation and projections, it's just that, right? How many people have we seen be so much better than what they were projected? Myles Garrett, he wasn't projected to be as good as what he ended up turning into. You never know. And the thing that's always hard to factor in is work ethic, coaching staff development, but drive, right? Because there are some people that have always been extremely talented, and their drive isn't necessarily as much as a player that's going to come in and is going to get it in the mud, right? And that's what you're hoping to see here from a guy like Shamar Turner. And I think that he's going to bring he could bring, I'm not going to say for sure, but he could bring a lot of that establishing identity that the Chicago Bears are looking to do with their defense. Underground News and Media says Turner a baby Sue nasty attitude with good coaches playing under control. Woo. Yeah, I mean, he got to get the penalties down. And I love that Shamar Turner does have that awareness as well to say, hey, I got to bring the penalties down. And we'll see. We'll see. He's going to have a great opportunity to do it. Great opportunity to do it here. Derek says, has Ian Wheeler fully recovered from his ACL tear? We haven't really heard much, right? But I think not hearing anything could be good in this case, right? How do you feel about the Nick Chubb rumors? This is where we're going to end the show at, right? We're going to talk about this. Nick Chubb is not a bad backup plan at all, right? Now, you didn't get, if the rumors are true, you didn't get TreVeyon Henderson, who you were reportedly trying to aggressively move up for. But with getting Monangai, right, who I do like looking at Monangai's tape, there's a lot to really love there, right? But if you want a more surefire thing, I do think that bringing in Nick Chubb, if he's healthy, and keep in mind, the Bears don't have a whole lot of money to give anyway, so it's going to be a decent deal. And DeAndre Swift and Nick Chubb went to college together, 1 year that they spent together there, right? If you bring in Nick Chubb, even if it is 1 year, 2 years, if he's even 80% of what he was when he was fully healthy, that brings a whole change of dynamic for the Chicago Bears offense. And yeah, I would have loved to be able to get TreVeyon Henderson and have something you could build towards for the future. But Chubb is a guy that, like, he suffered an injury in 2023. He played 10 games since then. Over the last 2 seasons, 10 games. And that's something that is a concern there as well, right? But when he's healthy, when he's playing, the style that he runs with, and you look at how you compare the power speed combo that for example Johnson and Gibbs had, I think that you bring that over now. You can bring that. I'm sorry, that Gibbs and Montgomery had in Detroit. You can bring that over to Chicago a little bit, right? So I think pairing Nick Chubb with DeAndre Swift and taking a look at that for a year is not a bad backup plan for the Chicago Bears. Actually, it's a really good backup plan. Now it doesn't have like the feel of like drafting a TreVeyon Henderson, getting an Ashton Genty, right? It doesn't have the allure of that because of the injury and stuff going around with it. But Nick Chubb is not a bad consolation prize at all, and it is something that that Ryan Poles has done before, signing injured veterans that bring a skill set that you need and seeing what you can get, seeing what you can get. So we'll see what happens when it comes down to that, man. And again, I'm not saying that it fixes everything. I'm just saying that as a consolation prize and as a backup, not Chubb being a backup, but as a backup plan to getting your running back in the draft, I'm not mad at having a backfield of Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Kyle Monangai, Ian Willer maybe in there some as well. Like, I'm not mad at that. And you take a look at what these guys can bring. You go through training camp, you take a look at it. If the Bears do bring in Nick Chubb, though, I don't think it's going to be something that you probably see until after well into training camp, if that's what ends up happening. Now, I know that Nick Chubb has posted the video of his workouts and him looking good and all that type of stuff, and that's all fine and dandy. But once you get in between those lines on that football field, it's a little bit different than jumping over things in a workout room. Is all I'm saying, right? And again, nothing meant to be slide there or anything or hate on Chubb, but you just I gotta see it in reality before I'm willing to just go all the way into it and be like, oh my God, yay, we got Chubb. He has to prove that he is going to be able to stay healthy. But if if Nick Chubb can stay healthy, I tell you what, that Chicago Bears offense, it looks good. It already looks good. It looks scary at that point in time. And Ben Johnson has already said, like, this isn't a team that's waiting to win. They're trying to win now. And so if you bring in Nick Chubb again because you feel that he's fully healthy, that's a win now move. And I'm not going to ever be mad at you trying to make win now moves. So, we'll see what happens with that one. We'll see what happens. Broski, I don't think you can say that until you see him on the football field. Let's not act like we've never seen a football player suffer from some injuries and bounce back. Now, I'm not saying that you're wrong for how you feel either. I'm never going to tell you that you're crazy for how you feel, because I understand what you're saying is rooted in, and it's rooted in fact, right, of what we've seen. But we'll see. We'll see. So, I think y'all betting too much on Monangai. But I mean, I could love to be wrong on that one. I hope that Monangai comes in and we look at it and we're like, 7th round, Monangai, we got it. I really hope that we say that by the end of this year. I'm just taking the wait and see approach. I've been excited about the potential of people, right? But we'll see what happens. We shall see what happens. Doug says Monangai is Bucky Irvin. He doesn't look tough. He don't look tough to bring down, but he is, and he don't fumble. Ian Willer, not gonna lie, I don't think he makes it. I mean, that's definitely a possibility, right? But here's the thing that I'll say in this. I just don't want to get caught up in just assuming that somebody's going to be able to translate what they did in college into the NFL, especially when they went that late in the draft. But when you look at the fact that he doesn't fumble, when you look at his pass blocking, even at his size, he is a relentless pass blocker. If he's in there in the backfield and somebody gets through that offensive line and he has to protect Caleb Williams, I trusted more than Doug Kramer at playing at fullback. So, I mean, you never know what's going to happen there. You never know. You think Burden will get rushing attempts? I've seen him line up in the backfield in college. Under Ben Johnson, I think anything's possible. I think Ben is really, him and Declan Dory are both very creative offensive minds. I think they're going to try to get everything out. I think they're going to try to get everything that they can out of those guys. That Johnson RB just to lose based on availability. That's Johnson's running back job to lose based on availability. I don't think that. Like, keep in mind, this is a whole new coaching staff, right? I don't think that anybody's job to lose. We'll see. Kyle had a 4th round grade. It just shows you how deep this running class was. There you go. Good point. I believe in the staff to develop new and old talent. This year will show just how important coaching really is. And that is a great statement, because I think it's easy sometimes to forget how important coaching is. Coaching is hugely important. to everything, every aspect in every sport, right? I think sometimes people can take coaching for granted, but we'll see what it brings this year for the Chicago Bears. But y'all, that's my time for today, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys are following us at Shy Bear Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoBearCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.